Everybody, I'm Bruce Lamb, and welcome to the set of our new television program, American Home Repair. It's based on our video series, You Tile It and You Do It Yourself. Hopefully coming to a cable channel near you soon. Right now, let's talk about the You Tile It counter video. We're going to be installing a 4x4 tile over Wonder Board. We're going to show you how to tile over old tile and even wood. Now, the adhesives we're going to use today allow you to tile over these surfaces. We'll be using thin set mortar and acrylic mortar admix mixed into the thin set, a very important point. Watch the tape a few times before you get started and review it while you're working. This way you understand all the steps. Let's get started, shall we?
Using power tools. The following power tools should only be used by those who've had the proper training and are familiar with the power equipment being used. The first example of cutting tools is a wet saw. The wet saw cuts using a diamond chip blade and is water cooled. You can rent one of these saws in most rental yards, and it's designed to cut all types of tile. It easily makes straight cuts, angle cuts, miter cuts, and many other types. Hand cutting tools. There are several types of cutting tools for every tile. They range in price and size for your needs. These are just a few of the best and easiest to use on the market. They are all equipped with a carbide cutting wheel that scores the tile, then with a quick snap, they split the tile in two. Hand tools needed for tile. These are the basic tools you will need when tiling. The first tool is called a margin trowel. It is used for prying up tiles and mixing mortar. Here we are demonstrating the rod saw. The rod has small carbide chips attached to it, which allows you to saw through the tile. This works well with most softer tiles. The next tool you'll need is a notch trowel. The notches on the trowel come in different sizes to measure the correct amount of mortar to be applied to the surface for the type of tile you are using. Here we have the tile nippers. The cutting edge of the nippers have carbide teeth that are used to bite off small pieces of tile. Mark a line on the tile you need to trim and bite off the small pieces. Use only the edge of the nipper's teeth as shown for smoother cuts. For grouting, you will need a rubber grout glove. This is used to spread the grout across the tile. You will also need a large grout sponge for cleaning your tile. The remaining tools you may already have, like a pencil, a tape measure, a chalk line for marking your working lines, and a carpenter's framing square and a long straight edge. You will also need a couple of large buckets, some rubber gloves, and good eye protection when cutting tile. Today we'll be tiling over ceramic tile, concrete backboard, and even tile over wood using the following methods and procedures. All the methods shown are recognized procedures by the Tile Council of America. Here with the use of this model countertop, we will show you the different ways to lay out your countertop. If you have an L-shaped countertop, start tiling at the corner and work from front to back in both directions. If you have a U-shaped countertop, use the same layout as the L-shaped counter. You may, however, end up with some small cuts at this rail. Always start your layout at the corner of the two longest counters. Always place the cuts at the least noticeable or least used side of the counter. Laying out an island or a single counter. First, find the center of the counter with your framing square. Then, if you have a V-cap corner tiles, place them on each side. Now, add your regular V-cap tiles from side to the other. Some people prefer one cut at the end. Most people, however, prefer two larger cuts at each end. You can figure this out by first putting the mark at the center of the trim tile and placing this mark on the center line of the counter. Then add the tiles until you see the size of cuts. If the cuts are smaller than half the tile, remove one at the end and line up the grout joint with the center line of the counter. You should now have the two largest cuts at each end, and your trim will be centered. Now make these cuts and place them in. You are now ready to lay out the field tile. Use the same procedures to lay out the field tile. As you can see, there will be no cuts in this layout. Move the tiles around until you have a layout you like. This tile counter is now ready for your tile installation. If you desire, you can tile directly over this plywood counter. But first, special consideration must be taken and followed carefully. Secure the wood so there is no movement. It must be dry, clean, and follow the adhesive manufacturer's directions very carefully. Discuss your project with your tile dealer before you begin your project. Here, we are using custom thin-set mortar and a mixture with custom acrylic mortar admix in place of water to ensure a good bond and long-lasting installation. For difficult bonding conditions such as porcelain and cement body tiles, use super strength custom flex mixed with a thin-set mortar. Mix the thin-set mortar and acrylic mortar admix according to the directions, so it spreads easily but has enough consistency so when you comb the mortar with the notch trowel, the ridges will stand up and not slump. The notches on the trowel come in different sizes to measure the correct amount of mortar to be applied to the surface. Check the back of the custom thin-set mortar bag or the acrylic mortar admix container to find the right size notch trowel for the type and size of tile you are using. Here you can see we are applying thin-set mortar and acrylic mortar admix directly over wood and have set our tiles directly to it. This is the most economical way of installing tile to a countertop. But if your budget allows, we advise you to use a concrete backer board. The backer board is good insurance for years of use. Here we have some examples of backer boards from custom building products called floorboard, glasscrete, and wonderboard. Floorboard is 1/4 of an inch thick, glasscrete is 1/2 an inch thick, and wonderboard is 7/16 of an inch thick. These products are compressed Portland cement and expanded shale aggregate, sandwiched between polymer-coated glass mesh reinforcement. Backer board can easily be cut with this carbide tip scoring tool and a straight edge. Score along the straight edge, and then snap it the same way as you would drywall. For cutouts and holes, use a chisel to break through the fiberglass. Then with a hammer, break through the board. You can use a portable mini grinder equipped with a diamond blade for other types of cutouts and thin cuts. When covering plywood or vinyl, first spread a mixture of thin-set mortar mixed with acrylic mortar admix over the surface. Place your backer board over the mortar and fasten it down using either 1.5 inch galvanized roofing nails or 1 1/4 inch wafer head screws with corrosion-resistant coating. Place the panels so they are not touching 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch apart. The nails or screws should be placed every 6 to 8 inches apart on the perimeter throughout the field of the board. Here we are about to start tiling over backer board on an L-shaped countertop. The first step is to take your framing square and to see that the countertop is square at the corner. If it isn't, you'll have to add mortar to the back of the trim tile until it is square. We'll be using 6-inch long V-cap countertop trim tile along the rail, and a tile known as an inside corner will be used to give you a perfect 90-degree angle to start from. Begin spreading the mortar across the counter. Remember, the notches measure the correct amount of mortar needed for the job. Comb the area so it has the same thickness. Make sure the teeth of the trowel are just barely scraping the countertop. Pick up some mortar with the edge of the trowel, like this, and apply it to the edge of the countertop. If you find that you have too much mortar on the counter, use this method to pick up the mortar and scrape it back into the bucket. Spread an area about 2 to 3 feet in both directions and comb it a few times, making sure it has all the same thickness. Place a few V-cap tiles along the rail, including the inside corner, and begin setting the field tile on the counter. Notice the first tile will be placed on the edge of the inside corner tile. Then begin setting tiles along the V-cap in both directions. Push the tile firmly and try not to push them together too hard. The little bumps on the tiles are called lugs. The lugs give the tile the proper spacing needed. Notice after the first row of tile is in, how it is to line up at the corner. Now begin placing the remaining field tile in, making sure you push down firmly and that they are straight. When all the field tile is in place, it is time to make your cuts and place them in along the sink opening and at the back wall. Only make a few cuts at a time because quite often the cuts will vary in size. To make an L cut like this, simply place a field tile in position and make a couple of marks where the sink opening is with a grease pencil. Next, place another piece of field tile over this one and align up the marks like a square. Then mark the tile. You are now ready to make this cut with your rod saw or your tile wet saw. Add more mortar to the area and carefully push the cut into place. Try not to push too hard because it may break. Continue adding mortar along the front edge of the counter and place more of the V-cap tile and cuts in at this time. Now, add your mortar in the back side of the sink opening and begin setting this tile in place. After you have set 4 or 5 of these tiles, take your framing square and make sure these tiles are square with the other tiles. You may find that you have to push or pull these tiles to make them square up with the other tiles. Now, spread more thin-set mortar and continue adding your VCAP tile. When this is completed, you can now begin adding more of your field tile to this area. At this particular time, you can see that we do not have any more cuts to make at the sink opening. Just keep plugging away, placing the tiles in and pressing them down firmly. When you have a couple of rows down, use your framing square at the back side of the sink as well. Place your corner VCAP in and add the remaining VCAP. Here we are marking this section of VCAP to be cut on the wet saw. After we've made all of our VCAP cuts on the wet saw and have placed them in, we can add the remaining field tile to the counter. As you can see here, we'll have to make some more cuts to complete this counter. Now it's time to tile the backsplash. We'll be using Custom's 4000 ceramic tile mastic over the drywall. We'll be using a 1/4 by 3/16 V-notch trowel to apply the mastic. Begin spreading the mastic and comb it until you get a uniform coverage, so it's the same thickness on the entire wall. After you have spread the mastic, begin setting the tile. Simply line up the tile with the tile that's on the countertop. Next, you can start stacking the tile up the wall and around the light fixtures and switches. Notice here how we will bridge around the switches. Just push firmly and align the tiles up the wall. Now you can measure and mark your tile for the cuts needed and cut them on your wet saw and place them in. Try to make the cuts as close to the screw holes as possible, so when you put the cover plate back on, the cuts will be covered. Continue setting your backsplash tile around the entire countertop, and soon you will be done. Before we begin to grout, we are going outside to tile over an existing tile bar top. We will mix our thin-set mortar and admix as before and tile over the existing tile. After your mortar is spread, begin setting your VCAP tile on as before. Then begin placing in your field tile. Before you mix your grout, you must mask off all areas you don't want the grout to come in contact with. This includes along the cabinets. Place plastic drop cloths in front of the cabinets and on the floor, and don't forget to mask off underneath the overhead cabinets. Today, we are using custom polyblend non-sanded grouts. When grouting tiles with less than 1/8 of an inch grout joint, choose one of Custom's 47 colors of polyblend non-sanded grouts. When grouting joints with more than 1/8 of an inch, up to a 1/2 inch wide, you must use a sanded grout. Sand helps fill the joint and prevents hairline cracks. Custom has 47 colors of sanded grout available in the polyblend formulas, which include the Classic Standard Series, the Popular Impression Series, and the Beautiful Designer Series. All polyblend grouts are mixed with water only as the mixing liquid. Start by adding a little water to the bottom of your bucket. Now add your non-sanded grout and begin to mix it with your margin trowel. Mix the grout so it has the consistency of peanut butter. Begin spreading the grout with your grout float, pulling it across the tile diagonally, pressing the grout firmly into the joints. By spreading the grout at an angle with your grout float, it will be less likely to get caught into the grout joints. Notice we are holding the float at a 60-degree angle and bring all the grout towards us as we go. Next, scrape off the excess grout from the surface like this. Then take the grout left on the float and begin to fill in the grout joints along the rail. Make sure you go over each joint and that the grout is pushed firmly into the bottom of the joint. Now take a damp sponge that has all the excess water squeezed out and begin to slowly remove all the excess grout from the countertop. Try not to push too hard. You just want to start smoothing out the grout joints. Use your margin trowel like this to cut sharp all edges and corners. These areas can be difficult to clean with just a sponge. Here you can see we are grouting the backsplash at the stove area. Notice we are pulling the grout up at an angle, just like we did with the countertop. After your first wash, go over the entire area one more time and give it a final smoothing out until all the joints are uniform in size. After the grout is set for about an hour, or when there is a dry film left on the countertop, dust the area off with a dry cloth and remove all the masking tape.
Well, folks, that's all the time we have left on today's video. I'm Bruce Lamb. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this information made your projects run smoother. Bye-bye now.